So welcome again to another meeting of this group. And today we're going to get back into the sector conversation and do a few more things. The agenda that I have in mind for today is we will welcome to the sectors in the fashion that we did last time. Go through and have people raise their hands just so we can see everybody that's here. I will say I do have a couple people from RAP, from Regulatory Assistance Project, with me here today who won't be raising their hands, and that would be Andrew Valanis and Ronnie Sandoval. So the three of us are from RAP. Everybody else is you all. And we'll do another quick overview of the timeline that we're operating on. Then I'm going to offer you the sector composition that sectors have requested. So folks have made known, what they would prefer the outcome to be for all the sectors. It's a rather large group of people, so we'll decide if we're comfortable with that. But we're going to try to do that in about 30 minutes. I will say a couple people have to leave, and a couple people are joining us after a few minutes. So trying to get the sector composition piece done before the folks who need to leave. So then we'll do a quick member seating status check-in. So if you know what members you want to have represent your sector, if that decision has been made, then you all can say that. If you don't, then that's fine. And then subsequently, on Friday, if you want to announce who the sector representatives are on Friday in our virtual meeting, then that'll be fine. If you're not ready to do that at that point, that's fine too. But would like to announce the sectors on Friday. Then we'll spend some time planning for that virtual meeting on October 20th, and then summarize some next steps. So now I want to go through the sector welcome process, just so we all get a feel for who's in the room. And I'm just going to go down through these sector classifications. And have you raise your hand if you're affiliated with that sector. So I'll start with states and provinces. If you could raise your hand if you're a state or province representative. Well, there's more than one. Oh, there's Commissioner Tawney. And there's a couple, Simi is here, and I believe Jane is here as well. And Commissioner Thompson, yep, there you are. And also President Reynolds will be joining us in a few minutes. How about California transmission owners? PG&E, Edison, and LADWP. Good to see you all. EIM entities. David Rubin from NV Energy. By the way, one of the Vijay Singh from Pacific Core. Any other? I believe APS might be in the room. Maybe not quite yet. Josh, Seattle City Light. You get to introduce yourself. You get to be in more than one group, Josh. You're lucky. Okay, moving on to, here's our APS person just entering now. Welcome, Ali. We just did I'm going through and introducing folks. We just introduced EIM entities, and that's your group. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're also welcome. Public power and co-ops. Connor with PNGC, Josh with Seattle City Light, Stephen with LADWP. Anybody else today? I know Tony can't be with us today. He's traveling.
Hi, Carl. Mary Winky from the Public Generating Pool is on.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Hey, welcome. Nice to have you.
Hello. Thank you.
Okay, one thing I'm going to mention is that one of the pieces of feedback I got from the recording was that people couldn't always tell who was speaking. So today, when we end up doing dialogue, if people could remember to say who they are when they speak, in case it's not, apparently it's not obvious on the recording. I haven't watched the recording, but just a reminder. Okay, how about independent power producers? Who do we have with us today representing that group? Scott, and I believe Spencer is here. Yeah, and Mona Tierney Lloyd. Nice to see you. Okay, how about consumer advocates? Matt and Michelle, welcome. Nice to see you all again. Then I group these folks together just for the purposes of introduction. Large customers, tech companies, / non-utility LSE, and non-utility load serving entities. So we have Brian, Kathleen, Heidi, Evie, Lauren, and Mona. Mona is another one that gets to introduce herself multiple times today. So congrats. Let's see. And then we have a labor person joining us today. Mark, there's Mark Joseph down. He's raising his left hand. Yep. Public interest organizations. Who do we have today from public interest organizations? Elaine, Mark, BJ, Mike, and Ben. Welcome to all of you. And do we have a PMA? I didn't see anyone come in from WAPA.
Hi, Crystal Dean from WAPA is here.
Oh, hey there.
I was
Okay.
a few minutes late. Apologies.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Good to see you. Okay. And we have a couple more people joining us. Okay. So moving on, just a quick reminder of our timeline. This is the same slide as presented last time. We're in phase one. We launched this community of volunteers on October 6th. We had a meeting last week on the 11th, and now this is our second meeting. And we're headed towards our second virtual stakeholder meeting this coming Friday. So just a reminder of where we are. We're in the early stages of phase one. Okay. I'm not going to go through the more detailed one here of activities, but there it is for your review afterwards. Now I want to jump to the next agenda item, which is the proposed sector composition based on the preferences expressed by all of you. So this is not you rendering judgment on what other sectors have proposed. It's just what folks have proposed, as far as I'm aware. It's a rather large group. There's a proposal from the states and provinces to have 3 representatives, California transmission owners 2, EIM entities 4, public power and co-ops 4, independent power producers 3, residential, small commercial consumer advocates 2, a large commercial customer representative, a technology company / non-utility service provider representative, a non-utility load serving entity. Labor has requested to be included, public interest organizations, and PMAs. Somebody raised the question about, are these seats that can only be populated by the member that sits, or can they have an alternate? And my opinion is that you can have an alternate that sits for you, but that's subject to conversation. So I guess what I want to do now is just have a conversation about this. Does anybody have comments, concerns? I guess, with a committee of this size, I would tell you that I think the launch committee becomes kind of a mechanism for staying connected with stakeholders. How the launch committee then establishes work groups that are of a reasonable size and that can be, led efficiently and well, and not be too dispersed, is going to be, more important the bigger the launch committee is. But we could also drive toward a smaller launch committee. I guess these are just things that are up for conversation. Anybody have any comments, recommendations, reactions to this? VJ.
Thank you, Carl, for all this work again, and good to see everybody on this call. In the last call, WRA had recommended that tribes get a voice and a seat, but we feel that between WAPA and PIOs and others, we can find a way to engage the tribes. So in the interest of making sure this is workable, this is the thing. And I'll defer to our other PIO colleagues as need be. But our PIO three seats are based on geographic representation and making sure we don't flood too many seats and just being candid. Thank you.
Sure. And thank you for raising that. Just one quick reaction, VJ, and thanks for saying your name when you started speaking.
My bad, Vijay Satyal, WRA.
Okay. Oh, maybe you didn't. I just assumed you did. So VJ, thank you for raising the tribes. I think where it is that outreach to additional groups, which last time included labor. Labor is now here, but so tribes could be added later if tribes express an interest in being included. I think that's where we left that one. So
That's
the fact
fine.
that tribes aren't here is not indication that outreach won't be conducted. Rather, that it's just not there right now.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Heidi.
Thank you. Heidi Roth-Siba. Just a small note, the large energy customer groups conferred ahead, and we had been anticipating 2 seats and think that would be appropriate moving forward. I know we want to keep the size of this group manageable, but there are some differences in the formats between groups representing large energy customers. So I'd like to raise that.
Okay. I had some confusion over the large customer and a non-utility load serving entity was under the large customer category last time. And so there were 2, but they were kind of split there. But the non-utility load serving entity requested to be listed separately, and the technology company non-utility energy service provider also requested to be listed separately from large customer. So I'm not sure if you've actually shrunk or not, to be quite honest, but yeah, Evie, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the questions I had is I had assumed that the non-utility ESP would be in the same category as the non-utility LSC. In fact, I had talked to the ESPs about this sector already. So.
Okay. And so would that be one representative for the combination of non-utility LSE and non-utility ESP, or is that 2 people?
Well, I know that, they're fine not participating, that they're called the Direct Access Customer Coalition. So they are, and our own DAC. So I don't know. How did they end up with technology companies? That's fine with me too, but I just.
So I'll just say that the folks that reached out about technology companies and non-utility energy service provider as being distinct from non-utility load serving entity, I think were Advanced Energy United and Enel. Is that right? Do you all want to speak to?
Hi, this is Brian Turner, Advanced Energy United. I don't think so we did argue for a technology company slot. At the time, we were thinking of the utility scale renewable / storage developers that are not represented by IPP associations, but then primarily around the distributed resources, and did not address non-utility energy service providers. So I don't know how that got in there. That's not, we had not proposed that.
Okay.
We're
And
fine with Evie's suggestion there, or original intent.
okay, so Evie's suggestion is this is direct access / non-utility.
Well, it's actually the non-utility ESPs, I think, unless someone else knows differently on this call.
Mona, do you have any thoughts on
Yeah.
this one or not really?
It makes sense to me to group together the non-utility ESPs and the non-utility LSEs.
Okay,
And I think with the technology companies, that would incorporate distributed energy service providers. So as long as we're looking at that definition of technologies as inclusive as of those services, I'm good.
okay, thank you. So given this, Heidi, is there still underrepresentation of large customers in your view, or what do you think?
We'd be okay to go down to 1. We can work it out.
Okay, great. Thanks for these changes, recommendations. Any other thoughts on this? Are people comfortable? Again, I would just emphasize this is a starting point. It can always evolve this over time, but we would like to get started. Yeah, Kathleen. And please remember to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. This is Kathleen Sachs from Western Freedom, and I just have a question. I'm fine with the sectors here. Are these, I assume these meetings are going to be open to the public, so anybody could listen in if they wanted to, but it's going to be those who are participating, or how is that going to get set up?
Well, that's my favorite answer to all your questions. It's what you decide. But but I mean, I think the presumption is that generally they would be open meetings, but that there would be kind of the roundtable of the participants and the observers, and the people who would speak during the meeting would be the member representatives.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, but I think you all can decide when you gather together as a group how you want to structure yourself. Jeff, and please remember to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey Nelson, SCE. Just a point of clarification. You've got on the second bullet, California transmission owners, and just for clarification, I believe it's California IOU transmission owners, in that you've got public power and other folks being represented through other categories.
Yeah, that's right. That's how it was communicated to me with the IOU in there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other observations, conservation, or conversation around this, or is this a reasonable starting place? Michael.
Carl, Michael Colvin from Environmental Defense Fund. I think this is fine just before we make this public. Just for the sake of acronym alert, there's some things that are spelled out and some things that are not, and we might just want to be consistent that not everybody might not know what a PMA is or what an EIM is. I would hope everyone on this call knows what an EIM is at this point, but we might just want to be a little conservative with all the acronyms that are flying around.
So Power Marketing Authority or agency?
Administration.
Administration. There we go. Okay, thanks. See, even I don't know.
See, the acronyms are confusing.
Okay, go ahead. Yep. Anything else? Any other? Oops. Yeah, Evie.
If we're just doing cleanup, I think that non-utility load serving entity subsumes non-utility energy service provider naturally. So
Mona,
the two
is that-
types of non-utility load serving entities are CCAs and ESPs.
I agree.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that,
Evie, I think that's right.
Just have to spell out CCA and ESP.
okay. Was that a request? I didn't catch who was speaking.
It was more of a snark. It was Jeff from SCE. So
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Steve, Stephen?
Like you, Jeff.
Yeah, it's Steve from LA. The second bullet there, sorry, I was distracted a minute ago. I may not have been paying attention fully. Is there a reason we are just putting investor-owned utilities, or can we put public and investor-owned utility transmission owners?
This is the way it was conveyed to me. I think that's for you all to talk about.
Okay.
Matt, do you have an answer?
Not necessarily an answer, but I wanted to identify. I mean, I think the reason California is called out is really because of the different situation that we face as part of the CAISO. So I would vote to have it either be, I think Jeff said IOUs, but I would actually say participating transmission owners. LA can certainly, and I expect you to want to volunteer under the EIM entity designation, but you are differently situated in that your transmission is not part of the CAISO. So the transition to independent governance and potentially if an RTO future looks different from where you're sitting than from where we're sitting. And that, I think that's what it was meant to capture. So I'll leave it
I
at that.
appreciate that. That's very helpful. That explains it well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jeff, are you good with what Matt said?
no, actually, it needs to be investor-owned utilities. This needs to represent the IOU's interests here within the ISO and the PTO. Again, there's a bunch of other sectors that have representation already on this list. So I don't accept the friendly amendment of just making it PTOs. It should be IOUs.
Matt, do you have a response?
I defer to Mr. Nelson. Investor owned is fine. There are both. There are
Well, how about
participating
Steve?
transmission owners who are not IOUs and IOUs who are not PTOs, and we can all argue about who fits in where.
We can merge the IOU participating transmission owners.
Okay, so we can either settle on a name now, or you can, we can say, Steve Pruitt, you raised the original point. Are you okay with it being investor-owned utility now that you have the framing for why, for the participating transmission owner, or what's your preference?
I'm not opposed to the way it was. I'm kind of impartial to the way it ends up now.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. All right, any other, see, I didn't spell out EIM yet. Oops. Matt, do you still have your hand up, or you do not?
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, everybody okay with this as a starting point? So this is what we would announce on Friday at our meeting with the larger group of stakeholders and regulators. Is that everybody's okay with that? Okay, great. Thanks.
Hey, Carl, I apologize. Michael Colton from EDF here. I couldn't raise my hand fast enough. I just wanted to acknowledge Andrew's comment in the chat, and I think I brought this up last week. The total number here is now 26, which could lead to an even split if we were doing that. I think that if we were doing it by numbers, so the clarification question I have is that I don't think it really matters the total number of seats that we have. It's the total number of sectors, assuming that each sector gets gets one vote. But if it's each individual name gets a vote, we just need to clarify that, because I don't think we want to set ourselves up to a situation where we're at an even split. I think if it's number of sectors, then I think we're okay.
I think we haven't really. Yeah, no problem. We haven't really discussed voting yet. We haven't discussed decision making. What we're deciding is, what does this community of the launch committee include, right? And then a next question is, how do we divide up responsibility? How do we prioritize? And if someday we need to have a vote, how are we going to vote? So I would say that that's a good conversation to start at your first meeting as a launch committee. Right now, I don't think we're really deciding. I don't think we have time or haven't really properly prepared for a conversation of voting. But I appreciate the odd even idea, and I'm sure that you all will consider that when you actually get around to deciding how voting will work if you need to vote. Is that okay? Is anybody not okay with that approach? Okay, thanks, Milt, for the thumbs up. Okay, great. So are we ready to move on? I think we are. Excellent, we're on time. Thank you. So the next thing I wanted to, I guess I don't have a slide in here for this. I didn't put a slide in here in the middle. So I'll just stay on this slide for a minute. So this is our composition. This is the name of our sectors. Do you all, do people want to announce right now if you have decided on who the representatives are for your sector, and we can go through one by one, or do you want to defer that? And the second question is, do you want to decide, do you want to announce on Friday who sector representatives are, at least for those who have decided? So I guess two questions there. Maybe the first question is, do you want to announce those folks who will be sector representatives for those who decide by Friday, on Friday? Yes or no?
Carl, this is Milt with the Washington Commission. Is it more convenient or efficient for you just to take those on Friday and just maybe ask everybody to have those names on Friday? We're prepared with the states group to provide names now, if that's what you'd like, but otherwise, kind of use your discretion if you want to, do it now or not. It's up to you.
Thanks. Do others do? I don't have any. Go ahead, Brian.
This is Brian Turner, Advanced Energy United, was just going to suggest better to get the conversation started now and avoid any surprises or anything like that. Might as well get started, even if we can't finish it all today.
Okay, is that okay with everybody? And if your sector is not ready to say, we'll just say defer. And in the meantime, you can call me if you want to talk about anything or whatever. Okay, so states and provinces. So Milt, you're the chair, so why don't you?
Yep, Kevin Thompson, Commissioner from Arizona, Alice Reynolds, President of the California Commission, and me.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about California investor-owned transmission owners?
Carl, this is Scott Renzo with PG&E. I believe, and Jeff will correct me if I'm wrong, it's myself and Jeff Nelson from Southern California.
Okay.
That
That's
is correct. This is Jeff Nelson, SCE. That is correct. Thank
okay. How about energy imbalance market entities? Is there a spokesperson for that group? So we'll defer on that one. Mark.
Yes, thank you, Carl. This is Mark Joseph. I have to leave the meeting, so I wonder if we can jump out of order. And
Okay, yeah, go right ahead. Yep.
The labor nominee is me.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank
you. Okay, Josh Walter.
Hey, public power and co-ops is close, but I think could use a couple extra days, so we will defer until Friday.
Okay. And the EIM entities also want to defer until Friday. Maybe we don't have, maybe.
I believe that they're also close, but maybe defer to Friday also makes sense.
Okay, sounds good. Independent power producers. Scott?
I think Spencer and I need to defer. We need to talk to some of our individual companies, but we'll work on it.
Okay, thank you. Residential and small commercial.
Hey, Carl, it's Michelle. Sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand very quickly there.
Oh.
You've got us already. It's Matt and me. We have conferred with all of our Western colleagues and have their endorsement.
Great.
Oh,
Thank
there's
you.
Matt raising his hand.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Sorry, I had a contractor come in. Thank you, Michelle. You did great.
Okay. Thanks, Matt and Michelle. Okay, how about large customer? Do we have a large customer person? Kathleen?
We're going to defer until Friday, which, between the two of us, we'll figure it out and let you know then.
Okay. Technology company representative.
Yeah, I'm still working the phones, so it may be me, but have not locked that down yet.
Okay. Non-utility load serving.
Sorry,
area.
that was Brian Turner, Advanced Energy United.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brian. Non-utility load serving entity.
Evie call for Cal CCA. I think it will be me, but I'll confirm on Friday.
Okay, excellent. Labor, we just heard from a moment ago, Mark Joseph. Public interest organizations, Michael.
The PIOs are trying to do this geographically. So for the Pacific Northwest, will be Ben Otto. For the Mountain West, it will be Elaine Ginocchio. And then for California, it will be either myself or Mark Specht, where one of us will be the main, one of us will be an alternate. We're figuring it out. We'll confirm by Friday.
Okay, sounds good. And the Power Marketing Administration.
Hey, Crystal Dean. So Western Area Power Administration will be the seat. It'll either be Tina Coe and or myself. So similar, we'll have by Friday who will be the primary and who will be the alternate.
Okay. Great. Okay, so there we have it. Well done. And again, if you have any questions or if you're not ready on Friday to say, just give me the heads up and we'll kind of coast past you at that point and say that it's still being determined. So just let me know. Anything else on the seating? Okay. Moving on. So here's a proposed agenda that I have for October 20th, which you all can choose to change if you like. But so this is my initial proposal, and I'll just pause after each item, see if anybody has any thoughts. Just as we did at the first one of these meetings with the volunteer group, where we had Commissioner Dumit give a welcome and, kind of announce the handoff from the states group to this new launch committee. We thought that would be a good way to start this meeting as well. And I assume everybody is okay with that. Looks like everybody's okay. Then I wanted a couple of representatives. We don't necessarily need to decide this right now, but from among the group of all of you, I would like a couple of people to talk about what happened on the 11th and today. What was your deliberation? What did you talk about? What did you decide? And I don't imagine that you all have had a chance to talk with each other about who will be your spokespersons. But if you have, great. If you haven't, then it would be good to have a few people who are ready to talk on the 20th and have thought about it a little bit ahead of time. Any nominations from the floor on who you wish your spokespeople would be?
Tony's not here. Can we nominate him?
Tony, who's that?
Yeah, Tony.
Okay, well, that's perfect. If he's not here, then he's a prime candidate. So there you go. Okay, so I assume Tony's coming on Friday. I actually don't know for sure. Do you guys know? Yeah, okay. So Tony, do you have anybody else that, or anybody that would especially like to do this? You can volunteer yourself as well. I think it would be good to have, Tony is kind of more on the utility side of the spectrum, so we might want a couple people that are from different sectors. Any thoughts there, Kathleen?
Thanks, Carl. Kathleen Sachs with Western Freedom. I'm happy to participate if that would be helpful. So.
Okay. And Scott, yeah, thank you. And Scott, what's up?
Yeah, Scott Miller, Western Power Trading Forum. We talked, and subject to more conversation with our members within the sector, because it was just a conversation between the trade associations. At this point, I think we'll just have Jan Smutney Jones. He's a somewhat well-known individual. Just kidding. Will be the spokesperson for the independents.
Okay. All right. So maybe we'll lead with Tony, and then have you all jump in. And if there are other sectors that would like to talk here at the beginning to talk about this process, there'll be a place for you to jump in as well if you want to talk among yourselves and come up with one or two more people. That would be good. Or if anybody wants to step forward or volunteer somebody now, that would be fine too.
Carl, can I ask a quick question? Sorry, it's Kathleen
Sure.
again.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume this is kind of, we're just sort of talking. This is during the meeting on Friday. Just making. I'm fighting a cold, so I just have to like reconfirm all of the things.
Good. Okay.
Apologies.
Yeah.
This is for the stakeholder meeting on Friday. We're kind of presenting the progress that we've made, the conversations that we've had to date. So it's not even necessarily like just specific to the large customers. We've had these kind of conversations generally as a group. Here's some of the deliberations that we went through, and here's where we landed, and we think this is representative, and etc. Yes.
So you can see the next items in the agenda. We're going to talk, specifically about the launch committee sectoral composition. We'll specifically introduce members to the extent that they've been selected. So this second item on the agenda would just be to tell people, so there's about 45 of you. Then there's about another, 250, 200 people that will come to the meeting on Friday. This is just to catch them up for people that didn't come, that haven't taken the time to watch the recording of these meetings, for them to just get caught up on what the process was, what, from your perspective, what the content and the output from the launch committee or this volunteers group was. And this is like five minutes, or it's not a long thing. Mona, you had your hand up.
Mona Tierney Lloyd with an L. Just wanted to suggest, Carl, that for that portion of the agenda for identifying the launch committee composition, it probably would make sense for each of the sector representatives to introduce the other sector members and what the sector represents. I think that might be helpful for people that haven't been involved in these conversations.
And when you say introduce the other sector representatives, do you mean the other members of the launch committee from their
Yes,
sector?
that's what I mean. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I like that. It's good. And since we're doing that, maybe we don't need to cover all the bases when we do this overview thing at the beginning. We can just have a couple of people talk. That sounds good. Okay. So happy to talk to if the volunteers want any coaching on item 2. Happy to talk to you tomorrow, but I think you got it covered. I think you understand where we're going there. So and launch committee sectoral composition. So we'll have some, we'll do something like put up the slide like I showed just a moment ago that has the numbers by each sector. And then we'll go through the member seating maybe in the way that Mona described, where we have for each sector, we have like a lead person that then introduces, if there's more than one person from that sector, then the lead person introduces the other people from the sector. People like that? Okay. Not hearing much. That's fine. So then, Michael.
Carl, I have to admit, I'm not certain I understand what you're trying to accomplish with your sectoral poll listed in number 7. We're trying to poll the non-launch committee members what they think the top priority is, or what information are you hoping to get out of what's listed in number 7?
Okay, I will take that as a comment that I need to go faster, and so that we get to 7 quickly from number 4.
Sounds great. You answer the thing you want to answer, not the thing I asked. That sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, so my my thought here is that number 5 would be to announce that the first meeting of the launch committee is going to happen sometime next week, and that the launch committee will be getting together to decide on what the highest priority work groups should be to start right away. So that again would be pretty quick, and we just have a spokesperson there. And then the comment summary is many of you and some others have submitted comments. They're being summarized right now. I'm going to have 2 or 3 slides that just hit the high points, recurring themes from the comments, not go through them in any kind of detail. This is again, like a 5-minute thing. Okay, now, Michael, your moment has come. Here we are at number 7. So number 7, the idea here, and we don't have to do this, but I thought we could go through the launch committee by sector and ask a question like, what initial activity of the launch committee is most important to you and your sector? And have one person speak for your sector and just call out, we will have had the background of what the summary comments said generally, and it's a chance for each sector to kind of double down on, the thing that we're most interested in getting to work on right away is X. Does that sound good? Does that sound, is everybody going to say the same thing and that'll go very quickly? I don't know. I'm open to suggestions, but this is just what I thought would be a way of hearing from every sector on substantive next steps. What do you guys? So Michael, what do you think of that?
Thank you for explaining what's in your head. I very much appreciate it. My suggestion is that since we are now going to have each of the sectors do an introduction of what the sector is and who's on it, we can just have them say one additional sentence there about sort of what the top priority for the sector is, or some other moment. And then I think we don't need 7 as a poll. I think what we might want to do though is if there is something where the non-launch committee participants want to feel engaged, and we do a Zoom poll or something on a key question or two and hear how that breaks down, that might be useful information for the launch committee to have. I guess I just sort of feel like if you're going to have all these people assembled together, take advantage of it.
Okay.
But that's just my own personal yeah. Others can disagree.
Okay, good point. Do people like the idea of consolidating what activity or what are you going to start with into when we do the when we announce the members, that they could then say something about what they're interested in, or do we not really want to do that? Several people, put thumbs up on having it consolidated. Does anybody think that at this point we don't really want to ask that question?
Yeah, this is Brian Turner, Advanced Energy United. I don't know if it's necessary to put it in that tone. I think that there might be a role in the stakeholder call for folks to speak up about why they're excited and dedicated to trying to make a success out of this project. That's a good message for a variety of interests to put forward to stakeholders. If there's an appropriate opportunity to do that, something at the end here that opens the floor for that might be useful.
Okay. Vijay.
Thank you. Not completely building on what Brian said, Vijay with WRA. I think an area that would be valuable to kick off is this is a kaleidoscope. I've heard different folks having different impressions of what this initiative includes. So not just what people want out of it, which is very much valid, but what is your initial interpretation of what is in scope and what is not? I think would be a healthy way to get everybody on the same real estate. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Carl, this is Milt with Washington again.
Yep.
Were you anticipating just getting it out there, sort of to tee it up for, or, VJ said, maybe we'll come together. Did you want to have a discussion around these items at the same time, do you think, or just kind of tee them up for folks to consider for the moment?
My thought in proposing this was that was just to give the attendees who are not on the launch committee a flavor of what the launch committee's interest and priorities are. For example, I mean, I hope that the stakeholders feel like when they hear these, higher priority items, that they feel like, well, they're focused on the right things. Or if they're not focused on the right things, then there'll be an opportunity for them to say, well, I didn't hear anybody say this, and this one is really important, I think, for this reason.
Okay, got I understand. I think that is important to
yeah.
set that up. Thank you.
So I think what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to ask for a couple of launch committee volunteers to help me reshape this agenda to reflect the thoughts that we're getting, rather than having me go back into my little solitary confinement cell and do this. So if a couple of people want to volunteer we can do it by email probably. I would just send this out to a few of you, or I could send it out to everybody, and people that want to provide input can do that in writing. Or if there are a few of you that would like to work on this with me to make sure that it gets shaped the way that you all want. Do I have any volunteers?
Carl, this is Milt. I'll volunteer.
Okay, Milt. Anybody else?
Carl, can I ask Vijay
Yeah.
WRA exactly what is the specific question you asked, please, for the scope of volunteering?
I'm just saying that rather than me finalize the agenda on my own based on your comments right now, I would like some people to interact with me as I finalize it to make sure that I'm capturing what you all wish would happen on Friday. So does that make sense, Vijay?
Thank you.
Yeah. And so I see that Kathleen and Elaine have raised their hands. Are you volunteering, or did you want to say something?
Volunteering.
Okay.
Volunteering.
Okay, great. That's great. If anybody else wants to volunteer to help finalize the agenda for Friday, let me know. But otherwise we'll just run with that. The other, in terms of, I like Michael's idea that, we haven't really, what we've focused on so far in this agenda really is saying what the launch committee is, who it is, what it cares about, and what it's planning to do next. But we haven't really engaged the stakeholders at large. And I've suggested one question, which was, is there anything missing from what we've discussed so far in terms of priorities? Are there other questions that you think would be useful to engage the larger stakeholder group with this Friday? Michael.
Carl, you probably already had this on your plan, but I think the slide that you had a couple of moments ago of where we are in the process and what's sort of happening for the next, I would say, quarter or between now and the end of the year, what those major milestones are. Not for necessarily the launch committee milestones, but sort of the broader dates of here's when the next meetings are and here's sort of what we're planning to have done in the phase one. I think that would be very helpful just to remind folks that this is a moving train. We're trying to accomplish things. So reminding folks of that calendar would be something that I think should be presented if it's not already on your list.
Okay, thank you. Good idea. Vijay.
Vijay WRA, I think to build on this for the Friday meeting, if we're going to have a larger group, I think Matt Lecar would agree with me, who's on this call, that in the regional issues forum, when we see that we have an issue or an item that needs to be amplified or bring feedback, we try to make sure we go back and communicate with the sectors, as you all know. So maybe once you get all the nominees selected for the different sectors who have deferred till Friday, at some point at the right time when the entire family of representatives is known, is that they be, I hate to say be called out, but known to the larger community. So there is no dysfunction or miscommunication that, oh, we didn't know about it, or like, you know, it's on me to make sure the public interest community reaches out to me and know, well, you got Michael or Elaine or Ben, Otto or Mark. So I think that clear messaging needs to go out to set expectations so that you also not overwhelmed with tons of emails coming, and just to everybody, just a thought.
Yeah. Thanks. Good idea. Okay. So this is, I've got a group of people to help me bring this agenda in for a landing. I think we're generally feeling good about this. So we don't need to talk about this slide. So I guess the other thing that I would like to use are as much time as we need. If we want to use the remaining time, great. If we don't need this much time, then we can let you all go early. But there are a couple of other things that I hope to accomplish today. One is that we will be setting a meeting for next week. I think once we know who the representatives, the sector representatives are, we'll have to arrive on a day and time. So for a meeting of the launch committee, a first meeting of the launch committee for next week. So my plan for that would just be to send out an email to as many of you as are known at that point or likely, and have you propose times. I don't think we can really crowdsource that right now, but I just honestly, I think that's something that we're going to need to decide. And I'm not presuming that it's the same time that these last two meetings were at. If this time turns out to be the time, that's great. But I'm open to recommendations on days and times rather than just opening up a calendar. If people have particular days and times for a launch committee meeting, and you are on or expect to be on the members group, if you could just send that to me, a couple of times, then I'll try to corroborate all of that and then send it back out to you all to have you vote on 2 or 3 different times. Okay, so that's a request. Any questions about that? I'm happy to provide the platform for that meeting. I do think, along the lines that Vijay suggested, over time, as the launch committee takes shape and starts operating, I'm going to lay off some of these things that I'm doing to the launch committee itself. So, for example, work group meetings or things like that, I'm assuming are going to get self-organized. I'm happy to provide the platform when it's needed, but I'm also happy to have working groups offer the platform themselves through your organizations. So over time, and as you know, the number of groups grow to a somewhat larger number than what we have now, we're going to have to decentralize engagement with the stakeholders and communicating what's going on with the work groups and all that. So that's something that we'll need to work on together. So those are just a couple of logistics things. Now, the last thing I wanted to do today was to, in your comments, many of you filed, you said what the high priority items were. I think that on Friday, if we kind of have a common understanding of what a couple of the high priority work groups need to be from day one, it would be useful to let people know about that. And so I'm wondering if we can have a conversation for 15 minutes about what let's think about the three highest priority work groups or kind of areas of activity that you want to make sure get started right away. And let's think about announcing that on Friday. So any thoughts on that question? Yeah, Kathleen.
Thanks, Carl. Kathleen Stacks from Western Freedom. In the comments that there was a group of us that submitted, we kind of proposed 4 work streams, and I think I've seen a couple of other comments that are sort of in the same vein for plus or minus 1. But I think part of what we were trying to do within that was call out a couple of some of the threshold questions that we think need to get established. One, and I don't know necessarily that we have to answer these questions yet, but I think we need to analyze a couple of different options that potentially look at what's possible, particularly when it comes to California and what changes need to happen at CAISO to enable either an entity that can contract with CAISO for services or have CAISO sort of transfer the EIM and EDM services over to this new entity. What are the differences? What, from a structural standpoint, what are the costs associated with either of those options? Sort of the California question, and at the same time, the entity question. How do we create an independent entity that can do potentially either one of those things? I have had quite a few conversations with folks about the value of separating those two discussions. I think depoliticizing the conversation about the independent entity has a lot of value and could potentially bring additional stakeholders who've already said that they're not willing to participate in this process, at least get them curious enough to be paying attention. And I think having this evaluation of what we need to change in California and when is those to me seem to be the sort of top 2 questions that have bubbled up in many of the conversations I've had with folks.
Okay, Abby.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry
you.
for the background noise, but I agree with Kathleen, and we had those issues in our comments as well. But when we spoke, Carl, I think you made a suggestion that I thought was really important, which is what's most important is that we first establish the launch committee rules and protocols. Like, how are we going to operate? How is the vote going to work, and all of those things. So I would put that high on the list as well.
Okay, thank you. Scott.
Thanks, Scott Miller, Western Power Trading Forum. I think what I would sort of piggyback on what Kathleen was saying, because when I was discussing this with a lot of what I'll say EIM entities particularly outside of California, at the CREPC meetings 2 weeks ago, it was the legal issues associated with this, and whether or not this was something that people were certainly willing to do it, but if there were going to be high legal impediments to it, they'd like to know that ahead of time. And so that's just to put an emphasis on some of the items, and I would sort of separate the legal and what does it take versus costs and things like that separately. But that's got to be there as far as the people that I'm talking to.
Okay.
Carl, this is Milt with the Washington Commission. I haven't conferred specifically with our sector on that, but I concur with Scott and Kathleen. I think Spencer, mentioned it last time too. It seems like that's a threshold question, and therefore a priority work product.
Elaine?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump on board. We had this in our comments as well, that this threshold question is a priority issue. But, Evelyn raises a good point. We're gonna have to get our act together in terms of how the launch committee, the structure functions.
That was Elaine Ginocchio with WRA. Okay. There's one that hasn't been mentioned by anybody yet, which is the I know some comments were raised about, when is the right time to invite the California ISO in to start helping with answering some questions or providing information about pathways or identifying, specific challenges. And I think that kind of bleeds into the larger issue of how do these work groups get supported and staffed and at some point funded. So it's kind of part of the protocols and policy that Evie spoke to, but I just want to put a particular finger on, we need to figure out, who is going to be contributing to investigating the work of the work groups. And, I guess my preference as an outsider is that there's not one entity that's driving things, that there are, staff from different organizations from different stakeholder sectors that are actively engaged together, so that there's not one entity, either one utility or the ISO itself or anyone driving things. So I'm just calling out the question of staffing, and then at some point funding, which, maybe you don't need right away, but at some point, if you want to commission some kind of independent legal or technical analysis, again, a diversified pool of funds to me is a more credible source for that than an individual entity paying for that. So I just put that on the table in the category of staffing and funding. Letha, you disappeared. Did I just take all of your words out of your mouth, or?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. All right. Mary.
Thanks, Carl. This is Mary Winky from the Public Generating Pool. And I was going to agree with what you were saying and kind of emphasize some of the points. And I don't know if this is a third priority or if it kind of fits into the other kind of two priority buckets that we've already identified. But I think this question of kind of how this group is staffed, and then also who answers the questions that we have in particular around some of the legal and viability issues, I think is really important. And so I think it'll be an important task for the kind of the mapping of this whole project, in a sense, of kind of how it will be supported, who will do the work, and who will pay for that work. I think is really a good priority, and also pointing out the key role of CAISO is important, but I also think it's important to think through kind of in general, how will this ever be resourced, and who are the right people to answer the questions that we have to support the initiative. So thanks, Carl.
Okay, welcome. Michael.
Thanks, Carl. Michael Coleman with Environmental Defense Fund. I think that we can fit this in with one of the, probably your first top identified priority, but I think we should be explicit about it. We need to figure out as a launch committee, what are we trying to hit, what date, by when. There's some dates that are vaguely listed in the proposal, but that's sort of to stand up the committee. But to start, have a market be operational by what date, to have how many trades be occurring by what future time, if we're going to do an expansion, by when. I recognize that dates can change, that numbers of participants can evolve, all of this can be there, but if a launch committee is trying to say, hey, we're trying to launch this something, we need to know what the something is, at least in broad strokes, to make certain that we're setting ourselves up for success. And right now, I don't think we're fully articulating all the targets that we're trying to hit. So as we're evolving what's out there, I think we need to write some things down on paper, even if they are placeholders.
And the things that you would write down are milestones with deliverables, outcomes, and dates.
Yes.
Okay. Other thoughts about initial activities of the launch committee? Let me float an idea of so we're going to need to build an agenda for that first launch committee meeting to structure the conversation that we've just been trying to have. And so I'm wondering what your recommendation is for that. Is there should we have a launch committee agenda group that helps to build an agenda that delivers us progress, starting with that first meeting? And does anybody want to volunteer to be on that group, or do you think there's a different approach? Letha.
I think time is very short between now and that meeting, and we have the stakeholder meeting that we're already building an agenda for. I wonder if the group would be open to, based on the comments received and the conversation so far, sort of leaving it with you, Carl, with the input we have to frame that conversation up, and perhaps the RAP staff taking a crack at chunking out the priorities, or a straw dog for folks to react to and edit from, or perhaps there's a small group that wants to put something like that and make it emerge. I'm just conscious of how few days there are between now and the next meeting.
So Matt likes that suggestion. One approach is for us to come up with a straw proposal and send it to everybody on the launch committee. Another is to send it to a subgroup of people that want to work on this. And I'm happy to do either one. But maybe we just need to send it to the whole committee and see who responds at this point. Is that, yeah, okay. People like that idea. Okay, so we'll go back and create a straw proposal for the first launch committee meeting and send it out to you all around the same time that we send out the poll for the day, days and times next week that are looking best. Okay, well, I think we've accomplished a lot. We're coming toward the end of our time. It seems like, is there anything else that folks were hoping to discuss today, or any thoughts that people have about today's meeting or about next steps that they want to share before we go?
Carl, this is Mel. Just a continuing thank you to you and the team. Really a lot of work, and we all appreciate you moving us apace. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, it's a privilege and a pleasure to be doing this. I legitimately say it's fun. And I'm hopeful that we're going to make progress here. So thank you all. And we will be back in touch with the couple of items we talked about, and we'll be seeing you on Friday. If you have any questions, I'll reach out to Tony about being the primary spokesperson for the volunteers on Friday. Others may feel go ahead and weigh in if you like after Tony speaks. I'll let you know if Tony's not available. But I think with that, we will wish you well for the rest of your day and the rest of your week. Crystal, you have something?
I apologize. I just noticed VJ's chat from a bit ago, and I recall it. So apologies to take us a step backwards, but it should only take a minute. With respect to the tribal participation, just confirming, I guess, or affirming, there hasn't been any active tribal outreach at this point from anybody on the group with respect to this initiative, correct?
This is Elaine.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
it wasn't formally from this group, but WRA reached out to one or two tribal members that they knew to tell them about the initiative, but it wasn't anything really more than that.
Okay. No, thank you. And similarly, WAPA, included our engagement in the initiative as a part of a standard markets update, but we were just curious, if there had been any other. And of course, as WAPA continues to engage and determine our long-term engagement, we would take that on as a part of our normal business. And then, of course, like we've discussed, and I think BJ suggested, working with you all as needed, but just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
I have been told that Commissioner Houck in California has a special interest in this issue, and that she and Tracy LeBeau have talked some about this, but I don't know. I think that's just like early days conversation, Crystal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to confirm, I'm not aware of any outreach that has been done yet to tribes.
Okay, thanks, President Reynolds. Okay, and by the way, that kind of since we went back one step, I'll go back to that step and just say that another potential work group that might be created would be an outreach work group. That, you know, I don't know how you all want to organize ongoing outreach to those who are not already involved in this process, but, you know, tribes is one category of that, but I think there are probably others who will become engaged, express an interest, and maybe need to, you know, need some attention and to be drawn in and to have their questions answered. So that may figure into the work groups that you all establish as well, is that need for ongoing outreach and engagement with those not directly involved. Okay, with that, thanks again for your time today, and we will be seeing you all on Friday, if not earlier. See you later. Thanks again.